Good evening. This is really wonderful, because we can sit here together as a class and speak quietly, not in alarm, not with any drama, but as those who love truth enough to let it correct us without shaming us. Now then, when I say, watch out, I am not sounding a siren. I am not calling you to brace yourself against enemies. Watch out is the soft hand on the shoulder, the simple alertness that notices when consciousness begins to slip, when attention wanders from presence to appearances, from the invisible to the report of the senses. In other words, watch out is discernment. It is the capacity to notice what we are giving importance to. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. We must never use the words right and wrong as if we were measuring ourselves on a moral ruler. There are states and stages of consciousness. You see, you are not bad because a fear arises. You are not good because you have a calm afternoon. Those are passing weather conditions. Watch out means do not let a passing cloud become your sky. Do not make the cloud important. Do not hand fear your name, your breath, your time, as if it had any law of God back of it. Now the counterintuitive part is this. The moment you begin to fight fear, you have created a fighter's arena, and you have invited fear to be a worthy opponent. You have granted it reality, a voice, and an audience within yourself. You see how subtle that is? You decide, I must conquer this. And instantly you have said, this is something. And then you are its servant, because now your day is organized around it. Your prayer is organized around it. Your breathing is organized around it. Never, never, never. Do not organize your life around a suggestion. Watch out is your reminder that our work is never to conquer fear with willpower. Our work is to enter presence, to relax into that inner contact where the light reveals fear for what it always was. A claim, a pretender, an uninvited guest rattling the door. And I'll go further. Willpower is only another mask of fear, because it says, I must make security. Presence says, I am. The first exhausts. The second dissolves. Let us be practical. You hear a report, a diagnosis, a rumor, a number in a ledger, and the first tremor comes. Watch out. Not to tense, not to argue, not to draft affirmations as weapons, but to notice. Ah, here is the suggestion that there is a power apart from God. Right there, turn. Turn within, not to manufacture a mood, not to bargain, but to acknowledge. The place where I stand is holy ground. Quietly acknowledge. Do not measure yourself. Do not say, I should be beyond this. That is more fear dressed up as virtue. Simply remember, there are states and stages of consciousness, and whatever the state, the remedy is the same. Return to presence. So watch out means stop making fear important. Withdraw the audience. Refuse the promotion you were about to give it. Turn toward the one, and let the light do what fighting never can. Now then, let us be clear, because it will save you months of useless struggle. Fear is not a verdict on you. Fear is not a moral stain. We must never use the words right and wrong as if a lightning bolt marked you because a tremor passed through your being. There are states and stages of consciousness. In other words, what appears to you as fear is only a way of seeing, a level of awareness temporarily claiming to be you. You are not bad because it knocks. You are not good because it pauses. You see, you are witnessing degrees of identification. At one stage there is physical fear. And that simply means the body has been accepted as the self, and so the senses report danger and demand defense. Don't make it holy, and don't make it shameful. If your hand touches a hot stove, it withdraws. That is a state. Another stage is mental fear, where images of tomorrow, numbers on paper, the story of last year's pain, are strung together into a movie and then believed. Now the body is not screaming, but the mind is projecting, and you feel it as tightness in time, as if the future were your jailer. Then there is moral fear, the voice that whispers, "You should not feel this. Good people, spiritual people, do not tremble." And guilt rushes in to sit on the throne. And I'll go further. The most subtle is spiritual fear, the sense of separation. Perhaps God is not here. Perhaps this presence is for others and not for me. That is the root of all the rest, because once you accept yourself apart from the infinite, everything else seems to have a life and a will of its own. Now, watch how the trap is sprung. A first voice announces danger. Immediately a second voice, the judge, condemns you for hearing the first. Shame is not piety. It is a second suggestion pretending to be authority. It doubles the noise. Never, never, never. Add a verdict to a suggestion. You are not being asked to be a braver personality. You are being invited to change the level of identification. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. You demonstrate where you are, and you outgrow by contact, not by scolding. The aim of our work is not to become a fearless person through muscular affirmations. The aim is to realize presence, to rest where fear has no root. When consciousness is centered in omnipresent spirit, the physical reports quiet, the mental pictures fade, the moral judge has no bench, and the sense of separation dissolves because there is no you apart from that. Then, without a fight, fear yields, as frost yields to sun. Not because the frost was evil, but because a higher temperature appeared. So do not shame yourself into peace. You cannot. Turn, acknowledge the one, be still, and let the level shift. In that realized presence, peace is not achieved. It is revealed. Now then, let us put our finger on the root error, because if you can see this clearly, half the labor you have been doing drops away in a single recognition. The moment you fight fear, you make it something. The instant you brace, argue, plead, or push back, you have handed it a chair at your table and asked it to stay for supper. You see, resistance is attention, and attention is what circulates a suggestion through your system. What you fight, you keep in motion. What you keep in motion, you begin to organize around. And the minute you organize your thought, your prayer, your schedule around it, you have taken the servant's place, and fear has become the master of ceremonies in your own house. Now, watch this carefully, because it is subtle. When you resist a fear, there is a hidden bargain beneath the surface. The bargain says, "You can hurt me unless I beat you." That unspoken agreement is what gives the suggestion teeth. And then your whole consciousness is conscripted into a contest it can never win on that level, because by fighting, you have already granted it a life. Never, never, never. Argue with fear as if it were a person with a rightful vote. It has no charter from God. It is a claim, not a law. The more you answer it point for point, the more you enthrone it as counsel for the prosecution in the court of your own mind. Do not confuse this with prudence. Prudence is quiet intelligence, the calm noticing that closes a window in the rain, that looks both ways before crossing a street, that calls a physician when wisdom indicates. Prudence does not shout. It observes, it acts, and it sits down again. Fear, on the other hand, is a mental projection claiming authority. It strings images of "what if" on a thread, and then shakes the necklace in front of your eyes until you bow to it. Prudence moves from presence and returns to silence. Fear moves from imagination and demands an audience. In other words, the fight is the fuel. To attempt to win against fear is to keep stoking the engine that pulls the whole train of suggestions through your awareness. You are not required to win. You are required to withdraw recognition. Turn from the contest. Watch out right at the door and decline to enter the ring. Return to presence, not a mood, not a manufactured calm, but the realized fact of omnipresent spirit in the midst of you. Sit there. Be still. Let the claim find no consent, no echo, no counter-argument to grapple with. A shadow on the wall is not removed by brushing the wall. You turn on the light, and the shadow is found to be without substance. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. Any stance that acknowledges two powers invites warfare. Any resting in one presence removes the battlefield. Therefore, let your practice be simple. When the tremor comes, do not bargain with it, do not threaten it, do not plead for terms. Withdraw your attention as you would lift your hand from a hot pan. Not in anger, not in drama, just release. Acknowledge the One. Father, reveal thyself. And be quiet enough to let the bargain cancel itself for lack of your signature. Then you will discover there was no enemy to defeat, only a claim awaiting your consent. Without your recognition, it cannot live. In presence, it has no place to root, and so it passes, not because you won, but because you would not play. Now then, if we are to return to presence, we must be very clear what we mean, or else we will busy ourselves manufacturing a mood and then congratulating or condemning ourselves for the weather of our nerves. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. Presence is not positive thinking, not autosuggestion, not denial of the senses. Never, never, never attempt to hypnotize yourself into safety. Presence is not the glow of a pleasant feeling. It is not the hush of a tired mind finally giving up its chatter. Those may come as byproducts, you see, but presence itself is something else entirely. Presence is the realized spiritual fact, the wordless awareness that God, as spirit, is the very life, law, substance, and activity of this instant. In other words, we are not speaking of a distant helper who visits when properly petitioned. We are speaking of omnipresence recognized within. God is, spirit is, being is. The universe is already full of God, as full where you are as anywhere in heaven or earth. But, and watch this carefully, omnipresence is not the same as availability. You may sit in a room filled with radio waves carrying symphonies from 100 stations, and yet, until you tune, there is only silence to your ear. The music is present. It is not available to you until contact is made. So it is with God. The fullness is here. Here where fear announced itself. Here where the ledger frowns. Here where the diagnosis speaks. But it is of no avail to us as human sense until there is that inner click, that realized contact. And then the very same place becomes holy ground. Now, why does this matter in our work with fear? Because presence is gentle. It does not battle appearances. It does not push back, argue, or outshout the mind. Presence reveals. It shines so simply, so quietly, that what paraded as power finds no footing, no echo, and must retire. not because it was wrestled to the floor, but because truth was made evident. Light does not conquer darkness by combat. It renders it non-existent as a fact. So presence, realized, does not win. It discloses. And in that disclosure, fear is found to be a claim with no law behind it. You will notice, when the contact is made, there's often a softness, a sense of rightness without a reason, as if a burden you did not know you were lifting has been set down. Do not mistake that effect for the presence itself. Do not chase the sensation. Presence is not a temperature of your feelings. It is the recognition of the One, the quiet fact of God as all. When you rest there, even for a moment, you discover that you have nothing to oppose, because there is no second power to oppose, and therefore, the engine of fear loses its fuel. Now then, if presence is contact, the practical question becomes, how do we enter that contact without turning it into another project, another contest with ourselves, another way of bargaining for safety? You see, we must learn a prayer that is not a demand, a silence that is not a sulk, a reverence without an object. That is our next step, not to make something happen, but to be still until what is already true is allowed to be evident. Now then, having seen that presence is contact and not a mood, we must correct a very old, very understandable habit that rises up the moment fear taps at the door. The mind, trained by centuries of bargaining, begins to beg. God, protect me. Keep this away. Make me safe. Watch out. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. That very form of prayer may carry, hidden within its folds, the suggestion that danger is a reality, and that God is an occasional visitor who must be summoned by alarm. You see how subtle that is? In asking for safety as a thing, we tacitly declare that omnipresence is not quite present, that the One must be moved, informed, or persuaded, and in that instant we have stepped into two powers. God on one side, something else on the other, and then the fight begins. Now let me say it as straight as I know how. The moment you ask for a thing, especially safety as a thing, you have turned God into a dispenser responding to panic. You have invented a Santa Claus God. God is spirit. God is a law as well as love. Safety is not a package to be delivered. It is the nature of realized presence. What would you tell God that God does not already know? What protection could love confer upon itself that it does not already embody? The more you plead from fear, the more you advertise separation. The more you outline the terms of your rescue, the more you enthrone the danger as authority over your prayer. Never, never, never ask God to take fear away. Ask for God. Father, reveal thyself. Not because words have magic, but because that turning cancels the unspoken bargain with fear and returns consciousness to the One. Do not mistake this for fatalism or some cold indifference to human prudence. There are states and stages of consciousness, and you demonstrate where you find yourself. Close your window when it rains. Lock your door at night. Take the medicine wisdom indicates. Consult the physician if that is the level of your present understanding. But do not make fear your counselor while you do it. Let your steps be ordinary if they must, but let your guidance be extraordinary by refusing to outline, refusing to bargain, refusing to pray to a danger disguised as God. Prudence moves from presence and sits down again. Panic moves from imagination and keeps the drums beating. Learn the difference in your own heart by its tone. In practice, then, when the tremor comes and the old petition rises to your lips, Keep me safe from this. Watch out and stop right there. Withdraw the request for a thing. Turn within and acknowledge, quietly, without drama. The place where I stand is holy ground. If any words are needed, let them be only these. Father, reveal thyself. And then be still. Let the silence do what argument never can. In that receptivity, the sense of a second power begins to thin, and with it the need to bargain. Sometimes an intelligent step will present itself, simple and unforced. Sometimes nothing is required at all beyond the continued resting. In either case, safety ceases to be an object you chase and becomes the natural atmosphere of realized presence. That is prayer without petition, not neglect, not denial, but contact. And in contact, fear has no contract, no law, no life. Now then, let us come to the practice itself, because ideas comfort for a moment, but only contact changes the level. Set aside a period, 10 minutes, 15 if you can, at a definite time, and be still. Not to fix anything, not to make a mood, not to wrestle thoughts into shape, but to withdraw the food from the fear narrative. Sit quietly, feet on the floor, hands resting, eyes gently closed or lowered, and before you begin, say within yourself, without strain, I am not here to get rid of anything. I am here for God. Father, reveal thyself. And then, be still. In the first minutes, you may find the fear grows louder. Watch out. Do not interpret that as failure. The mind, losing its toys, shakes the rattle to keep your attention. It tells you stories. It projects scenes. It borrows the voice of authority. Let it. You are not there to argue, to answer, or to improve the script. You are there to recognize the one. When a wave of alarm rises, do not say, I am afraid. Say, silently, as a witness and not as a defendant, this is a suggestion in consciousness. It is a claim without law. And let it pass. Never, never, never call it yours. Do not label yourself with it. A cloud crossing the sky is not the sky. An echo in the canyon is not the rock. If the mind needs a gentle anchor, offer it a refrain that does not outline, does not bargain, does not set a goal. Thy grace is sufficient. Or, the presence is here. Or, I need nothing. Reveal thyself. Only a phrase, you see, not a sentence to pound into the mind, but a doorway you touch to remember what you are doing there. And then, be wordless again. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. Prayer is receptivity, not recitation. The refrain is not magic. It is a finger pointing to the silence where the contact is felt. As you sit, you will notice small shifts. Not fireworks. Do not look for visions. The proof of the Spirit is more like the untying of a knot you didn't know how to loosen. The grip in the chest eases, not because you conquered anything, but because you stopped signing the contract. Breathing finds its natural rhythm. Thought slows without being forced. A simple intelligence returns, the kind that knows whether to make a phone call or wait, whether to speak or keep still, and there is no drama in it. That is the test, you see. Not a sudden ecstasy, but the quiet dethroning of urgency. Presence outlasts fear. It does not fight it. If, in that stillness, the fear surges again, do not start over as if you had lost ground. Watch out for that trick. There are states and stages of consciousness. Waves come and go on the surface, while depth remains depth. Return to your witness. This is a suggestion. Return to the refrain if needed. Thy grace is sufficient. Then drop even that and rest. Rest in the simple fact that the place where you sit is holy ground because the presence is here. Stay the full 10 or 15 minutes even if nothing happens, because something does happen. Your consent is being withdrawn, and without consent, the suggestion cannot live. Practice this, not once in a crisis, but as you would honor a friend, with time, with attention, with no demand. Over and over and over again, you will discover the same law. When you stop feeding the story, when you refuse to make it yours, when you abide in wordless receptivity, fear is uncovered as only a suggestion, and in the light of realized presence, it has no root, no voice, no future. Now then, since prayer is receptivity and not recitation, let us look at the quality of heart that opens the door most naturally and keeps it open. Gratitude without an object. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. We must never confuse gratitude with a spiritual tip paid after a service has been rendered. Thank you because the pain is less. Thank you because the numbers improved. Watch out. That is transactional. That is gratitude tied to a result, and, beneath the smile, it still harbors the belief that good is uncertain and must be coaxed to stay. In other words, it is the same old bargaining in nicer clothes. Objectless gratitude is of another order. It is a quiet warmth toward the invisible, a simple rejoicing in the perfection, the nearness, the isness of spirit itself, before, during, and after any appearance. Why does this work? Because fear lives on grasping, on forecasting and self-preservation, on the premise that you are an isolated fragment required to manage tomorrow with your own hands. Gratitude, pure and without an object, shifts the center of gravity. It says, without speech, there is only God. The nature of reality is wholeness. I rest. And the very moment consciousness relaxes its grip and ceases to outline, a subtle receptivity appears. You see, grasping is noise. Receptivity is silence. Fear requires the noise of a second power to stand. Gratitude withdraws that noise and leaves only the one. Never, never, never attempt to be grateful in order to get something. The instant the mind whispers, "If I can feel grateful long enough, the problem will ease," you have stepped back into outlining, and outlining binds you to the very pictures you hoped to escape. Let us be practical. In your period of stillness, after the mind has been reminded, "Father, reveal thyself," let the heart lean gently into thankfulness without a reason. Not for a change of circumstances, not for a promise of rescue, but for the fact of God, Spirit present as life, as law, as love, as the very atmosphere of your being. Do not make speeches to God about gratitude. Feel it, if only as a faint warmth behind the breastbone, a soft willingness, an inner smile that needs no audience, a single, unspoken thank you, not addressed to a thing, but to the One, will accomplish more than 1,000 sentences. And if no feeling comes, sit anyway in that intention, as you would sit with a beloved friend in easy quiet. The intention itself is a form of gratitude that says, "I trust thy nature more than my forecast." You will notice, as this objectless gratitude becomes familiar, that it steadies the contact. The nervous search for signs diminishes. The body's urgency loosens. Intelligence begins to flow without compulsion. Gratitude does not push. It does not hurry. It does not bargain. It abides, and in abiding, it exposes the root of fear, the belief of separation, as a mere suggestion. When there is no me clutching at it, fear has no place to fasten. Presence fills the room, not by arrival, but by recognition. And fear, having lost its requirement of a divided universe, thins and disappears for lack of agreement. So let this be your watch. When you find yourself counting outcomes, measuring improvements, composing thank yous to a changing picture, stop and return to the source. Thank you, not for anything, but because God is. In that stance, you are no longer a beggar at the gate. You are at home. And in a home filled with presence, fear cannot enter, cannot root, cannot speak. Now then, let us allow Scripture to speak as revelation and not as a proof text for argument. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. Do you see what that says? Not that God will appear after you climb out, not that peace is a prize for the brave, but that omnipresence is presence, already, here, even where sense declares hell. Hell, in our language, is the appearance of separation, the hot breath of fear insisting, "You are alone." The psalmist is not licensing despair. He is unveiling a fact. God does not wait outside your circumstance. Omnipresence is not a destination. It is the nature of reality. And there means in the very midst of the report that argues otherwise. Now then, here is the reversal that ends so much of our delay. Most of us have been trained to wait. We say, when the fear quiets, I will feel God. When the numbers improve, I will be grateful. When the body calms, I will believe. Watch out. That is postponement, and postponement is unbelief dressed in patience. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. The way is not to escape first and then realize. The way is to realize, and the escape, as such, is found unnecessary, because the sense of a second power dissolves. In other words, you do not wait for fear to go to make contact. You make contact, and fear loses its alibi. Never, never, never set conditions for God contact. Do not say, first let the shaking stop. Let the shaking stop or continue as it will. You, in the same instant, can acknowledge, Father, reveal thyself, and turn from the picture to the presence that is the substance of this very place. You may ask, but how can I be in presence when my knees tremble? By refusing to measure presence with a thermometer of sensation. There are states and stages of consciousness. The body may register weather for a time, warmth, cold, adrenaline, while consciousness abides in the one. Presence is not a mood to manufacture or a pulse rate to achieve. It is the recognition that there are not two powers. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, shadow, not substance, thou art with me. You can walk with trembling legs and an untroubled center, because the criterion is not the quiet of nerves, but the cessation of bargaining. When you stop granting reality to a second power and rest in the wordless, thank you, because God is, you are in contact, regardless of the weather of your flesh. Let me give you how this works in the hours that count. A student wrote, "At 2 a.m, the heart raced and the mind paraded disasters." She remembered, "Watch out," and did not negotiate with the parade. She did not beg, "Take this away." She sat up, placed her feet on the floor, and whispered only, "Father, reveal thyself," then leaned into unreasoned gratitude. The racing did not halt at once, but something else did. Her consent. In 5 minutes, the meanings drained out of the pictures. In 10, breath found its own rhythm. In 15, sleep returned. The same bed, the same hour, but not the same consciousness. Hell discovered as no place. Another time, I sat with a ledger and a call to return to the bank by noon. The old habit moved to outline answers, to invent speeches. Watch out. I closed the book, turned within, and refused to ask for rescue. Reveal thyself. The place where I stand is holy. In that quiet, an unforced step appeared. Call a different man, not to plead, but to tell the truth without drama. The arrangement that followed was simple enough that, later, I laughed at the theater my mind had staged. The supply was present when contact was made, not when the numbers changed. And in a hospital corridor, a mother sat while her child was wheeled beyond the doors. There were tears. Of course there were tears. She did not wait to feel brave. She let the tears fall, and, beneath them, she rested in the single inward fact: thou art here. A nurse came sooner than expected with good information. I am not saying the tears caused the report. I am saying that in the midst, contact transformed the atmosphere from panic to presence, and even before the outcome was known, fear had lost its crown. Therefore, let this be your discipline. Do not postpone God by waiting for better weather. If I make my bed in hell, thou art there. Right there, this instant. Catch the mind as it says, after, 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 and answer with, now. Not to earn escape, but to discover that presence, realized in the midst, removes the root of fear so quietly and so surely that nothing is left to fight. Now then, words can point. Only demonstration convinces the heart. Let me take you into a day when I, too, forgot and then remembered. It was a Tuesday, early. A letter with a red stamp lay on the table, a matter that could not wait, and at the same time, a call was due from a man whose temper I had already rehearsed in my mind. The body tightened, the jaw set, and at once I began to handle the fear. Adding numbers, composing speeches, rejecting outcomes, pulling at the net like a fish that only tightens the mesh. You see what happened? The more I resisted, the more authority I granted the specter, and the room grew smaller. Watch out. I pushed the papers aside, turned within, and spoke only, Father, reveal thyself. I did not ask for money. I did not ask for favor. I sat, hands open, and waited. Not sulking, not bargaining, just the bare acknowledgement. The place where I stand is holy ground. After a minute, 2, there was the familiar click. Not a thunderclap, not a trance, but as if a lock inside released. The body still carried its weather for a bit, adrenaline in the limbs, a quick beat in the chest. But the center grew very quiet. Fear kept talking, but like a radio in the next apartment, it had been moved to the perimeter. From that quiet came a simple step. Call first, say the truth plainly, then ask for the factual terms. I did so. The voice that answered was not the voice I had rehearsed. The arrangement came in 5 minutes. The letter's red stamp lost its drama. Not a miracle to spirit, only lawful unfoldment once contact was made. In other words, the phenomenology, if you will, is this. The nerves may twitch, the breath may find its rhythm slowly, Yet the center is no longer on trial. There is no second power to debate. From there, action is clean, unforced, without theater. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. God, as law as well as love, operates as order, sequence, right activity, and what appears as answer is only the added form of that inner alignment. A second case. A student lived under a revolving marquee of anxious forecasts. Health today, supply tomorrow, relationship Friday. She tried to preempt outcomes. New diets every week, new budgets every month, new conversations every hour. And with every attempt, the forecasts grew louder. We changed nothing outwardly for a week. Morning and evening, 15 minutes, she sat with one intention. Father, reveal thyself. Followed by objectless gratitude. No requests, no measuring. The first days the fear shouted. She did not argue. She labeled it a suggestion and returned to silence. In the second week, the edge dulled. By the third, a calm intelligence spoke. Keep the appointment with the physician. Tell the truth to the friend without plea. Accept the part-time work offered without humiliation. She did all three, without hurry, without outline. Tests came back better than her forecasts. The conversation ended a chronic tension without bitterness, and the small work opened to fuller employment within a month. She did not control events. She consented to presence, and the events arranged themselves in lawful sequence. Do not hear these as exceptions. They are not miraculous to God, only to human sense. There are states and stages of consciousness. Demonstration is progressive. Some days you will still tremble. Never, never, never be ashamed to say, I am not through yet. Withdraw consent again. Return to contact again. Proof accumulates like quiet stones on a path until the mind, tired of its alarms, admits what the heart already knows. Fear dissolves by demonstration of contact, and presence is practical, present, provable, here, now, in the midst. Now then, if all of this is to be more than an inspiring hour, it must be translated into a way of walking through a Tuesday or a Thursday, with dishes in the sink and headlines in the street. Watch out is not a dramatic alarm. It is a gentle discipline of early detection. Fear does not usually arrive with symbols. It slips in as a flicker, an image on a screen, a headline on a phone, a tone in someone's voice, a clutch in the solar plexus, the faintest forecast that starts writing scripts. Watch out means notice it right there, at the doorway, before you serve it tea. You see, the earlier you catch it, the less theater is required, because you have not yet signed a lease with it. I'm speaking now from the standpoint of the infinite way. Treat it as a suggestion, not a sovereign, and it has no authority to occupy. So here is the sequence, simple enough to practice in a grocery line. First, pause. One conscious breath. No speeches, just a stop. Second, withdraw consent. Silently acknowledge, this is not authority. This is a suggestion. Do not call it my fear. Never, never, never make it yours. Third, turn within. No bargaining, no outlining. Only, Father, reveal thyself, or the presence is here. Fourth, rest, wordlessly, for a few seconds or a minute, until the sense of a second power thins, even if the body's weather still moves. Fifth, resume life in quiet intelligence. Return the email without drama. Pay the bill without rehearsal. Make the call without a plea. Letting the step arise from the center that has nothing to prove. Now, this is not repression, nor is it pretending. We are not painting the window and denying the storm. We are going to the foundation where storms have no law. Handle your human responsibilities. Lock the door. Keep the appointment. Consult expertise as wisdom indicates, but do not consult fear for guidance. Prudence is a servant of presence and sits down again. Panic is a servant of imagination and keeps beating the drum. There are states and stages of consciousness. Do what is wise on your present level, and all the while refuse to enthrone a second power by arguing with it or begging it to be kind. And let me urge you, value consistency over intensity. 10 or 20 short returns to presence in a day will do more to establish stability of consciousness than one heroic session and 11 hours of forgetting. 1 breath before you answer the phone, 3 seconds in the elevator, a quiet "thank you, because God is" at the curb. The same 5 steps while reading a headline. Pause, withdraw consent, turn within, rest wordlessly, resume quietly. Over and over and over again. Never, never, never. Wait for stained glass to declare holy ground. The place where you stand is holy, and a 2-second recognition can be enough to keep the door unlatched to spirit. As this becomes natural, you will notice that what changes is not the world first, but the seat of identity. You are no longer the defendant on trial before circumstances. You are the witness of the One, living from the center where there are not 2 powers. Fear may knock. There is no one home to agree. Contact becomes your climate. Gratitude, without an object, your breath. And from that place, the day arranges itself in lawful sequence, not because you fought a battle and won, but because you refused to serve a lie. That is the daily discipline. Catch the suggestion at the doorway, withdraw your consent, return to presence, and walk on, quiet, unhurried, unafraid, because the truth is living you. Now then, let us gather the thread. We have watched together how fear lives on conflict, how every argument with it lends it the dignity of a second power, and how, the moment contact with presence is realized, the root withers because the supposed other power is not there to feed it. In other words, fear is not conquered, it is uncovered. It is not chased away, it is found out as a suggestion in a universe that is one. And as that one is recognized, quietly, without fanfare, fear, which required a divided universe for its life, loses its premise and falls of itself. Now remember, I'm speaking from the standpoint of the infinite way. There are states and stages of consciousness. Never measure yourself harshly on this path. Use the practice where you are, and do not make a god of attainment or a shame of trembling. Do what is wise on your present level, and, at the same time, refuse to add a theology of separation to it. I have no spiritual pride about this. I know where I am, and I know where I am not yet. That honesty is not a failure. It is the open door through which grace does its quiet work. Take this as admonition, spoken in love. Never, never, never make fear your teacher. Do not let the forecaster of evil become your prophet. Watch out when headlines and voices, and even your own imagination, audition for the role of authority. Let prudence be guided by presence, but do not let panic outline your steps. The one thing you must not do is build a life around rehearsing disasters. For rehearsal is worship in reverse, and what you worship, you invite. So here is your closing practice. Simple as breath. Sit, if you can, just for a minute, or stand in a doorway, or pause before you turn the key, and say within, gently, without strain, Father, reveal thyself. I need nothing. And then be still. No bargaining, no measuring. A whisper of gratitude without an object. Thank you, because thou art. And then silence. Let the silence be the benediction. Even 2 seconds will do if they are clean of wanting. The place where you stand is holy ground. And I promise you, not sensationally, but soberly, as law, that as this contact becomes natural, harmony appears in its time. Needs are met without drama. Right activity reveals itself without hurry. Relationships find their true order. The body learns the rhythm of peace. God is a law as well as love, and what seems like miracle to human sense is only the inevitability of one expressed. You will look back and find that fear had no root at all except your consent, and you withdrew it. Now then, walk out quietly. Watch out for the first flicker. Refuse a second power. Turn within, rest, and go on. Unhurried, unafraid, because presence is gentle, and in that gentleness, truth stands, and fear cannot survive. Peace.